Yo, what's up, everybody? We're back, and today we're gonna open up this Electromotion Escape drivetrain. Now you see I've removed it from the bike, and we have our frame over here all nice and clean. So we need to put this unit back in before we reattach the swing arm. So let's get into that coming up. All right, so we got the cover off. We actually just left the bolts in there so that it'd be a lot easier to put back, and we'll clean up the inside a little bit underneath. We got to re-grease that bearing, so when we do that, we'll worry about it then. But for now, we'll just let that stay there. Got a lot of stuff over here. Let's try to clean this off. Okay, so now we're in here. We want to take off this flywheel because we just want to do a general inspection of the belt here. And this is the drive belt. This is what I was talking about. You can see it in all its glory. This is the what the drivetrain is set up for on the Electromotion Escape, Escape Lite, ePure Sport, and ePure Lite. This is the setup you're gonna get. This is why it costs a little bit. It's a little bit cheaper. You don't get the gear-to-gear drive like the Electromotion Escape R or ePure Race. But this is the flywheel that we added. This is not stock. This is a OEM, Electromotion OEM part, but it is an addition. So now we're going to take this off. And to take this off, we actually had to purchase a special socket from Electromotion. As you can see, it's almost like a crown socket. It has these little knobs on the side that go into this special nut. So with that, we will remove this. The best way I found is just a regular impact gun. It does have a self-locking ring in there, so it will stay pretty tight. We got to get in there and make sure we can get this guy off safely. All right. All right, guys, welcome back. So as you can see, we have our motor here. You've seen our disassembly of it, so now we're going to start putting this guy back together. As you can see, the belt is already on the gear drive. The pulley drive. And my apologies, I actually forgot to turn the camera on before I put this thing on. I thought I was recording, and apparently I wasn't. But let me give you just a real simple breakdown of how I did it, just so that you don't have any trouble putting the belt on. So I think most of our first reaction is to put the gear down here, and this is, removable, of course. This is fixed. This is the motor shaft right here. So I think our first reaction would be to put the gear in and then kind of slide the belt over and turn it and have the belt kind of track itself on. That's one way to do it. However, you are twisting the belt and you're risking fraying the edge of the belt here, which is what we want to stay away from. We don't want any frayed edges. And also, I would like to note that when the gear is out and when this thing is open, this is now a good time to check this edge here, just in case when you were taking this out, if you had to pry it or if you had to use something just to wiggle it out, if any of these edges got frayed, if any of these edges got nicked or burred, this would be a good time to check it and just maybe file it down or hand work it down, just so that you don't have to worry about it damaging your belt in the future. Okay, So instead of putting the gear down, wrapping the belt around, what I actually did was, you see this lip here? This is what keeps the belt on track on the motor side. So we actually put the belt under the lip first, put the belt down, and then we work the gear on. And of course there's an indentation on the bottom which holds this gear in with the shaft. So we were able to work that on, stretch the belt a little bit, and we had to finagle it, you know, push it, rock it back and forth, and ultimately it sat really nice. So now we have a perfectly good seated pulley, and the no damage at all to the edge of this belt, which could ultimately result in a prolonged failure in the long run. I would like to also say, if you're at this point already where you're trying to do some maintenance, I guess these bearings, now is a good time to open these bearings up. They're just a regular standard SKF bearing, and you know, you pop the seal out, repack it with grease, and you're good to go. Same as any wheel bearing. Very simple. And again, this is kind of the beauty of the electric bike, having much less having less moving parts, more efficient, and ultimately, even though we had to go through this process of taking it out, ultimately this is a lot less work if you were to do a bottom end on a gas bike. So this is that part. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually put the pieces back together with our cover and everything, and we're going to make this thing ready to install in our bike. All right, so before we get to do that, we have all these parts. I just want to say I'm using the Maxim waterproof grease. I use this also to pack the bearings. So that is actually what I've been using. It's kind of a catch-all. You do want to make sure you grease all these stuff up just in case. I mean, it doesn't ever hurt to have a fastener, you know, just slide right in instead of galling. So keep that in mind. Alright guys, so before we put this cover back on, from the factory it came with a bead of silicone. It was just regular clear silicone. I don't have the clear stuff at the moment, but what I do have is just some regular Permatex gasket maker. So this stuff, real simple. I actually cut the corner and just piped it on like a little piping bag. So yeah, just right around the edge. It's a little bit messy, but all we needed to do is to seal it up. If you've seen some of the videos that we've gone through water, it's very important to have this seal here. If you haven't seen the videos, check the link above, but check it out. And this will definitely keep us out of trouble later on when we're you know, going through some wet weather, or just happen to come across a river that we need to get across. All right. We got the cover fasteners down, and you know, I think some people might say this is a little overboard. Well, but we are representing Electric Motion, and we do want to make sure this bike gets to the customer in factory condition as best as possible. So per the torque sheet from Electric Motion, these fasteners are supposed to be 11 Newton meters of torque. So got a little mini torque wrench, set it to 11, and we'll just go around and we'll just make sure we hit that, just so that we have peace of mind knowing that this bike is to the best spec possible. All right, not very hard at all. Took us a minute, and now we have factory specs. Now we'll move on to installing the cover. and or our flywheel and our cover back so we can get this unit back in the bike. All right, so before we move on to putting the, I guess you would say, cover back, I did want to point out when you use these fasteners to lock the cover in, and this is why I really kind of preach the torque spec. So when I initially took it off just to look and to install the flywheel, I did not take into account that this was just, it's only about a 1/4 inch of aluminum. It's billet aluminum, but still only a 1/4 inch. And when I was tightening it, I overdid it. What happened was I stripped these out. So kind of painful. So, and there's two things I was worried about. If I stripped them out, and I ended up having to helicoil them, if you can see. We did a helicoil repair for these fasteners, so now they're good as new. However, I needed to take this cover off because what I was worried about was, number one, when I drilled through to do the tap and install the helicoil, I did not want metal shavings in here. That could potentially ruin the belt, fray the belt, and I mean I didn't want to worry about drilling into my gear, my pulley. So that's another reason why this cover came off, not just for the maintenance, but so that I could do this repair. So please, guys, when you're messing around with your cover or you're looking into it, just make sure you tighten these fasteners for the cover with very good care. And if you do ever have to do this and get into this spot, it might be a good idea to put a helicoil. Just drill them out and pull a helicoil anyway. These helicoils are steel, so we can tighten them a little bit with a little bit more confidence that we're not going to strip them out. All right, guys, so this is one of the final steps by putting this all together. Like I mentioned, we're gonna wait till put the flywheel on last, just because when we do tighten the flywheel nut down, which is this locking nut here, we're gonna have to put a bit of torque on it. So we don't want to actually have to jerry rig something to hold this while we tighten this down. So we'll put the sprocket back on, we'll put it back in the bike, and then we'll use the tire and the chain to hold this back while we tighten this. So moving on to this part, and I've mentioned before, when cleaning the bikes, this is the part you want to stay away from shooting, especially if you do use a pressure washer, which is okay, but you do want to make sure that you stay away from the seals, your bearing seals. You want to definitely stay away from the motor and the electronics. So the pressure washer is really just good for the general dirt under the fender, on the tires, and so on and so forth. But the reason why I want to point this out to you guys so that you know why it's not good to hit this is because for this one, there is a seal here and there is a spacer. And you see that little groove in the spacer? That groove holds a very, very thin O-ring. Now this O-ring sits in here, and that is one of the main seals between the spacer and the inside bearing. Now, not a big O-ring at all, but what it does is it just helps it out, just to keep the water from coming in. So yeah, don't shoot directly at this point. You can shoot down and whatever, but don't shoot directly into this angle. You will force water in there. You will get water into here, and then it just wears down the grease in the bearings like they always do. So we're just going to give this pretty good greasing here on the inside with our waterproof grease. We'll give some grease to the bottom area. We've already greased here, but it's okay. We'll just give it a little bit extra. And then we'll place the O-ring in that groove. Get a little more grease in here just to hold it in place while we slide this thing on. Now this one you're gonna have to finesse just a little bit, but it's only one part. Okay, so we have the O-ring in there. It's greased in there. Now we're just going to slide this on. And it is a little bit of a tight fit. So we don't want to press it on, and make sure we don't cut the O-ring on these splines. And when you get it down there, you can feel very nice, seated. We can wipe some of the excess away, and now we have a nice seated sleeve. And what this sleeve does is this sleeve offsets the sprocket here. This is a 11 tooth sprocket. This is what comes standard with the Electric Motion Escape. Okay, and then the last bit is our washer. They have a double washer here. They have two washers, and what we're going to use on this boat is we're going to use some blue Loctite. Now this one can be broken easily, just in case we need to remove it later, which we probably will down the line. So we won't put too much, but we'll put just on the tip, and that will force its way up, locking this guy in place. Now we'll just take our 10mm socket and we'll torque this guy down. Now when you're done assembling this, keep in mind this unit, the motor has some resistance. Now we have some tension on the belt, but keep in mind that this unit should rotate freely. So this unit should rotate freely, so we should be able to turn this by hand and vice versa from the gear and the motor. This is very important because you don't want any binding in this unit. Now if you have binding in this unit, take it apart, double check something, make sure your bearings aren't cocked or tweaked, because if you can't turn it by hand, something is definitely wrong. And what ultimately that will lead to, besides the uneven and untimely wear and tear of the bearings, of the shaft, of the belt, of anything in this unit, what it's also going to determine is your battery life. Now we're trying to get the most out of the battery, and any friction in here, any unnecessary friction is going to drastically deplete that runtime. You might not get as far as you want to go, and now your judgment of distance could be different. So the chances of you getting stuck out there, not knowing that you're draining your battery more than you need to, is very, very likely. So make sure before you put everything back together, make sure this spins freely. And even when this is in the bike, even when this is mounted and it's not sitting on a bench, once in a while it's good to detach your chain and just try open this up here and make sure you can spin this freely. That will ultimately help you recognize if you have any binding, if you see that your bearings are kind of worn out and you feel a grinding or something that's very, not smooth. You can identify then, and you can go into this and fix the problem ahead of time before you get stuck.